Nikhil is an amateur college athlete. He has started strength training at the college gym. He seeks your advice. As a coach, trainer, or a therapist, how do you help him design his strength training program? If you're looking for an answer to this question, you are at the right place. Welcome to this NPTEL offered course on physical medicine and rehabilitation in sports. And to this lectures on foundations of strength training with me, Wing Commander Chandrasekhar Guru. I'm a sports medicine physician, associate professor in the field from Armed Forces Medical College, Pune. The learning objectives of this lecture will be we'll be discussing about the strength as a motor quality, understand its principle and various physiological factors governing it. We also align this strength training principles with the principles of general training and the components of strength training program. We'll also look into various practical aspects of employing these principles in designing and try to discuss a case. What is strength training? Strength is defined as a maximum force or torque that a muscle or a group of muscles can exert on associated skeletal structure. So, strength training involves the use of resistance to induce muscular contraction or building the strength, anaerobic endurance, or by improving the muscle mass. So, it can use wide range of activities to improve the strength of an individual. You can use free weights, machines, resistant bands, or even whole body weight as well. What are the benefits of strength training? It improves your body composition. Body composition we would have dealt in detail in our course on Introduction to Exercise Physiology and Sports Performance on body composition, wherein body composition is comprised of fat and fat-free mass broadly. So, strength training helps in improving your muscle mass. It improves the metabolic health. It increases the bone density as well, and it enhances the sports performance and the motor performance. It also is seen to reduce the risk of fall in elderly and also to decrease the risk of injuries in athletes. Further, it also has psychological benefits. So, knowing the benefits of strength training, it is also important to understand what are the different types of strength as different qualities of strength. Something called as maximal strength. Maximal strength is the highest amount of force that one can exert. It's called as the maximal strength. When the same highest amount of strength is exerted in the shortest possible time, it's called as explosive strength. And if you need a sustained strength or exertion of force over a period of time, it is called as strength endurance. And if you express the strength or force as per the body weight or body mass, it is called as relative strength. Why it is important? It is important because understanding these different types of strength helps us to align our strength training principles as per the requirement of the sports, because every sport demand is different in terms of the strength quality that is required. Say for example, sprinters require more of an explosive strength, whereas marathon runners require more of a strength endurance. So knowing that helps in kind of designing the training program as well. What is the relation of strength and the type of muscle fibers? Again, this we have dealt in detail in the course on Introduction to Exercise Physiology and Sports Performance, wherein a separate lecture was done on muscle fibers and its function and how it kind of useful in developing strength. So we have broadly two types of muscle fibers, type 1 and type 2. So type 1 are slow twitch muscle fibers. They are fatigue resistant. So they are basically designed for long duration activity. So the energy system used in this particular type of muscle fibers are again oxidative because of long duration, right? And the force that is produced from these muscle fibers are comparatively low because they are required for long duration. So the force production is slightly lower, and that is why the muscle strength quality that is kind of developed using type 1 is muscle endurance. Whereas if you see the type 2, they are fast twitch muscle fibers. They are more fatigable because they are used only for very short duration, but then the power generation is very high, and accordingly the energy system that is used here for power generation is your short energy system, that is your ATP PCR or the anaerobic glycolytic energy systems. So they are mostly related to development of maximum strength or power. So that's the broad difference in terms of the type of muscle fiber and the strength quality that can be trained using a principle. Why it is important? Because training can shift the characteristics of this muscle fiber, though they are broadly genetically determined, but then there is mild deviation from type 2X to type 2A. So kind of because of the sports related specific training. Also, knowing this helps the coaches to individualize the training as per the requirement of the sports. What is the neuromuscular adaptation that happens because of strength training? Again, this we have discussed in detail in our lectures and introduction to exercise physiology and sports performance, especially in the adaptations, anaerobic adaptations to training. So, if I would urge all the listeners to go back and kind of reverse those lectures, which is already available online. First adaptation that happens, or the primitive adaptations that happens because of training is your neural adaptation. There is strength develops because of neural and muscular adaptations, right? So the neural adaptations generally is the first one to occur, and the common adaptations that happen are the motor recruitment. So the more the kind of training, better will be the motor recruitment of that particular motor neuron, that helps in enabling the particular group of muscle to produce more strength. Synchronization is again an important adaptation that happens wherein group of muscles and the neural motor neuron activation gets synchronized for doing particular skill or a motor executing a motor skill. The third important aspect is the reduced co-activation of the agonist and the antagonist. So what happens is when you activate your agonist, there is an activation of the antagonist also to have a control and a it's basically a protective response. But then because of training, there is enhanced kind of synchronization between these two group of muscles, and therefore it results in better force production. So that is an important aspect of neural adaptation. When you go on to the muscular adaptation happens mainly in the muscle, wherein there is increase in the number of fibers or the size of the fibers, mainly because of the activation of the satellite cells. So that results in something called as hypertrophy. And there is also concomitant changes that happens in the type of energy system that is required to perform a particular quality of the strength. Say if you have more of a strength endurance that is being trained for, then the energy system and the enzymes that are related with the energy system are increased in terms of oxidative uh, energy system. Whereas if it is for more of a power training or a speed training, it generally results in adaptations in the short energy systems, namely the ATP phosphocreatine and the anaerobic glycolytic pathways. So neural adaptations generally occur early in the first to 4 to 6 weeks of starting the strength training program, and subsequently the muscular hypertrophy and the subsequent adaptations happens in the as a baseline to the neural adaptation. Subsequently the muscular adaptations happen. So it is important as a coach or a trainer to understand that it is always the priority is to give towards the form and subsequently go on to the load that is being lifted. So that helps in a good or a better strength gain as compared to focusing more on the load that is being lifted initially itself. So it's an important carry home message that one has to remember. Moving on to the energy systems in the strength training, the energy systems, if you see, as we discussed, again, there are broadly three types of energy system. The shortest or the energy that is immediately given is through the ATP PCR as a stored form of ATP, which is already available. So, but then they are limited in amount. So they get exhausted at the earliest. So they are the shortest energy system. They generally last 0 to 6 seconds. Phosphagen adds on to with the fast glycolysis or the anaerobic glycolysis can last up to 30 seconds. Beyond that, it is predominantly the anaerobic glycolytic pathway. Then as the duration increases, you also have contribution from the oxidative phosphorylation. So at the 2 minutes cutoff range, you see 50% contribution of the anaerobic and 50% contribution from the anaerobic, and thereafter as the duration increases, it is more contribution from the aerobic pathway. So we also have discussed in detail in the previous lectures on during the course on introduction to exercise physiology and sports performance that not one particular energy system contributes completely for the motor execution. So it is always a amalgamation of the both energy system. It depends on the demand, that is the intensity or the duration. So it is important to understand this in a strength training program, because it helps to design the rest intervals that is required between the sets, and it helps to select the work is to rest ratio as well. So that helps to align with the training goals. So we will discuss about this in detail in the subsequent lectures, um, uh, which is covered in this particular course. So let's discuss a case. So Vishwa joined your gym and has been doing good resistance training since last 2 months. He is regular and has gained good muscular strength and size as well. What kind of hormone effects you think would have contributed this to this progress in the strength? Again, this we have discussed in the lecture on hormonal influences in training, sports training, wherein we have discussed about this. So broadly, there are three important hormones that contribute to strength training or strength gains. The first and foremost is the growth hormone. Second one is the testosterone, and the third one is the catecholamines. So as the individual starts the training, it is the hormonal changes will get stimulated and results in improved neuromuscular strength gains. So with training, the testosterone level and growth hormone level increase, and this increases the muscle force production, and subsequently it also helps in kind of increasing the size of the muscle. So as you keep on training gradually in a periodized manner systematically, there is increase in these two hormones. In a acute session where you have a high intensity heavy resistant training session, you also have really increased release of catecholamines. So what this increased release of catecholamines and testosterone does is that it also contribute to increased force production. So these are the major hormonal changes that aids in better strength gains. So now having known about the various aspects of strength as a motor quality and various factors that influence a physiological basis of improvement in strength gain, now it is important to understand the second part of the lecture, that is what are the principles of training and how we are aligning the variables in kind of achieving the desired outcome. So the principles of strength training, as we have already discussed in our previous lectures, there are major five principles of training. The first one is the principle of specificity. The specificity is nothing but you have specific adaptations to the imposed demands, called as the said principle. So if you train for a particular group or for a particular energy system, so you will have the desired outcome specific to that particular system and the group of muscle that is being trained. Individuality is the principle of individuality states that the no no two individuals are same. So every training program has a difference in terms of the outcome depending on the individual variation, even between the twins as well. So it is important to pay heed to the individual differences that one notices. Third is the principle of reversibility. What it generally means that use it or lose it. The principle of reversibility is simply like if you stop training, the gain that has been accrued over a period of time because of training starts to decrease. So this is the principle of reversibility. So it is important to have certain kind of training in place to avoid this detraining effect. The fourth important principle is principle of progressive overload. So this is simply like increasing the stimulus in such a way that over a period of time progressively this causes an increase in the strength output as well. So this is very important in terms of increasing the strength gain of any kind of strength training program. And finally, the important aspect of training program is the principle of variability. Principles of variability are also called as principle of periodization, which helps to kind of do it in a systematic and a cyclical way, that the strength gains are aligned with the competition period and the system of peaking the individual to the desired at the desired point of time, manipulating various variables. So this also reduces the chances of burnout and monotony in the training program. So it is very important to utilize all these principles in order to have good kind of effective training program, and to avoid plateau in the training and burnout, and also to prevent the injuries because of the strength training program. What are the components? Having known the basic principles of strength training, it is important to understand the various components of any strength training program, or the variables used to depict a strength training program. It is simply expressed using an acronym called as FIT PV. FIT PV is F stands for frequency. Frequency is the number of strength training sessions that you plan in a week. That is called as frequency. Intensity is generally expressed in a strength training program as percentage of 1 RM. So again, 1 RM we have discussed in depth in our previous lectures. 1 RM is nothing but the maximum amount of load that one can lift only once. So that is called as 1 RM. That is the maximum load, and we institute a training program as a percentage of that, depending on what is the outcome of the strength training that is looked at. And the third important component is the type of strength training. The type again depends on the equipment or what you use it to train the individual. So it can be a free weight like a dumbbell or a kettlebell. It can be using machines in the gym that you generally have, or it can be even own body weight as a resistant to provide resistance. So these are the different types that you can use to plan or design a strength training program. The other T of the components of training program, strength training program, is time. The how much is the session duration? So each session duration should have a specific time to be done, and that is important in calculation of the load of the individual as well. And the P stands for progression, as we discussed. The any strength training program, in order to further have better strength gains from the previous week, it is important to progress. The progression is again can be done in terms of either manipulating the volume, or it can be done by manipulating the intensity. So again, this depends on the what is the goal or the strength quality that is looked at by doing a strength training program. So when we speak about volume, the last V is the volume. So volume is generally it is kind of objective in at least strength training programs, because of the quantification of the weights that one is lifting. So and that helps in kind of giving an objective load as well. So volume is generally depicted in terms of the number of repetitions the individual lift or the resistance that is given into the number of sets. So generally we have 3 to 5 sets, and the time taken in between the two sets and in between the repetition is also used to calculate the total volume, and that gives you the total session duration or time of that particular session. So this particular volume is used in calculation of the external load in terms of load monitoring as well. So manipulating these variables will help in kind of focusing on what the focus of strength goal is. It can be overall strength, it can be an hypertrophy, or it can be strength endurance. It depends on the quality and the demand of that particular sports. So how do you represent this training program for an individual to understand, for a gym goer to understand what should be the number of repetition and sets that needs to be done for that particular session. So one way of doing it is that you mention the load that needs to be lifted by the number of repetitions with the load and number of sets that one needs to take. It's the simplest form of representing it. Or you can also go in a slightly detailed way, wherein you address it in terms of what is the exercise, what is the load, what is the repetition, number of sets, how should be the rhythm during the set, what should be the rest interval in between, and what activity you should ask the individual to perform during the rest interval. So this gives a detailed kind of mention about what needs to be done for the athlete during the particular session of the strength training program. So how do we plan a session? So when we plan a strength training session, the basic foundation is that the session generally starts with a multi-joint group or a large joint group. Then gradually you progress to single joint exercises, like start with a squat or a deadlift. Then gradually you move on to more of a single joint exercise like a bicep curl, something like that. And mainly the large muscle group helps in kind of preventing the fatigue which can happen when you start with a small joint or a single joint group. So that is also important to gradually uh, plan the session, and the exercise order in which it is to be planned is also important to prevent unnecessary fatigue during that particular session. And the design is also, main focus is on the strength goal. Say if the focus is on strength, overall strength, then you go for lesser number of repetition, but then increase in the number of increase in the intensity close to 100% or 85 to 100% of 1 RM. This is generally given for multi-joint group of exercises. When you are focusing on a single joint, then and your focus is more mainly to increase the size or hypertrophy, then the repetition is slightly increased. It goes up to 6 to 12 repetition. The weight or the load that one has to carry is also reduced. It is between 67 to 85% of 1 RM of that uh, particular joint. And if the goal is for endurance, say strength endurance, then the strength endurance means endurance goes for duration, right? So the volume again increases by increasing the number of repetitions. If you're increasing the number of repetition, obviously you don't want the muscle to undergo fatigue immediately, right? So you also decrease the intensity. So the intensity is less than 67% of the 1 RM. So that's how you modulate the repetitions, the sets, and the load that needs to be carried to achieve a certain strength goal that is required for that particular sports. So understanding this is very important. We will discuss in detail in the next lecture on periodization of strength training. An important aspect, as we discussed earlier, is also the rest interval and tempo, which helps in kind of addressing the type of energy system that needs to be trained for achieving a specific strength quality, right? So the rest is based on the energy system that is targeted, and the rest interval, if you want to target for maximum strength, so you are looking at generating more power. So when you want to generate more power, you are looking at short duration energy system, that is ATP PCR. So you literally want the ATP PCR to be kind of replenished before you induce another set of training, right? So that is the reason after doing a maximal workout or one particular repetition, then you give a rest interval of 2 to 5 minutes so that there is maximum replenishment of the ATP PCR that has been used. So that helps in kind of addressing that particular type of energy system. When you want hypertrophy, then you reduce this rest interval to about 30 to 90 seconds. Don't give too much, but then you're also kind of activating your anaerobic glycolytic pathway as well. And if it is more of an endurance related strength gain that is looked at, then you don't want to give a lot of time, because you wanted the oxidative system to kick in continuously and then give a sustained kind of energy output for the activity to be performed, right? So you reduce the rest interval between these sets. So between the sets, the rest interval will be grossly reduced, less than 30 seconds. So that helps in kind of giving continuous energy production from the oxidative system. So that is the concept behind the rest interval modulation in kind of targeting the energy system. Also, an important aspect is the tempo. What do you mean by tempo or rhythm of the exercise? So it is nothing but the time under which you keep the muscle under tension. So if I wanted say if I wanted strength gain in terms of strength endurance, so here strength endurance in the sense that I wanted to do an activity faster with low weight, right? So the tempo will be faster. The tension under which the muscle is during the activity is kind of reduced. However, if I want a increase in the size or an hypertrophy, so I wanted the muscle to be under sustained tension during the entire period of the repetition. So a slow moving eccentric type of activity will be concentrated on the particular repetition, and try to keep the muscle under tension for a prolonged period of time. So these kind of slow tempo eccentric kind of activity helps in increasing the muscle size. Whereas if I want a explosive strength, then I increase the tempo, I increase the kind of speed at which the thing is done, but also I increase the load as well, because we wanted maximum load to be generated in shortest possible time. So that's how you modulate the speed of the movement or the tempo of the movement as well, to address a particular type of strength quality that is required to be developed. While we have discussed most of the aspects of foundational aspects of strength training, it is also important to pay attention to the technique and the safety consideration. So, as we discussed, the adaptation itself starts with the neural adaptation. Subsequently, you have the muscular adaptation. So, technique is an important aspect. But before going on to the proper kind of strength training program, it is important to focus on the warm up session. So you always start with the warm up session, so that you prepare the group of muscle that needs to be trained, so that the muscle is already in a state for which it has to kind of respond to the stimulus. The form is again an important aspect. More than the load that is being given, it is the form that has to be given importance in the initial stages of strength training. The principle of progressive overload helps in kind of having better outcome in terms of strength training program. And if you are using free weights, a safety consideration that a well trained adequately positioned spotter has to be there to kind of support the weight whenever the individual is doing weight training or strength training with free weights. And important aspect in terms of movement pattern is that you should have mirrors placed in front, so that there are immediate feedback while doing the particular activity. Also, the trainers are there who can give you post completion feedback. So it is seen that real time feedback is more helpful in terms of correcting the movement during the process of doing the activity per se. So both of this feedback has to be given to the individual. And it is important to monitor the progress, because we keep saying about the principle of progressive overload. So in order to achieve that progression, it is important to monitor the progress. So that helps in kind of in preventing overtraining or burnout. And it also gets to know, the coach and the trainer gets to know whether the individual is ready to undertake that particular strength training program or not. Further, it helps to kind of vary the kind of sessions as well, depending on the fatigable nature of the individual. And it also kind of gives the coach an idea whether the individual's recovery state is good or not. Accordingly, the session can be kind of tuned. So the various tools that can be used to monitor a strength training progression is either subjectively, you can use rating of perceived exertion in a scale of 0 to 10, or a modified scale of 7 to 20. You can also use training logs, like as I initially mentioned, strength training program, you have all the loads objectively mentioned, quantified. So you can have a log of the training activities that gives an idea how much is the volume of training that has been imparted during the week. And that helps in kind of using a acute is to chronic load ratio to calculate the load that has been given to the particular individual. And recent advancement in terms of velocity based training also gives you the speed component to it. So accordingly, you can again monitor the type of strength gain that is kind of achieved by imparting a specific type of program. But most importantly in strength training program is sleep and nutrition, which are very important. Especially nutrition, it's important to address the metabolic window. The opportunity to kind of improve the strength gain is mainly through the right nutritional intervention after the strength training program. So certain specific consideration one has to consider is the factors that influence the strength gains. One is the age. As we know, physiologically also with age there is a lot of change in the strength quality. So in young athletes it is very important because here the focus is mainly on the technique rather than the load, and it should also be aligned with the growth pattern of the individual. So try to increase the kind of intensity during the peak height velocity during the adolescent pubertal range, during which it again varies with the individual. So it is important to monitor that particular height, and then at least 3 monthly, and then address or change the strength training program accordingly. When we come to the gender again is an important aspect physiologically, with because of the difference in the hormonal milieu as well as in the terms of the body compositions like fat and the fat free mass. So it is important to fine tune the strength training program in male and female athletes. As we've been discussing during the entire lecture, goal determines what type of strength training depending on the demands of the particular sports that is being played. The fourth important aspect is the recovery ability. So recovery ability is again an individual thing, so that needs to be again catered for and monitored for every individual. And the last two are basically the based on the athlete profile. What is the kind of athlete or level of athlete the individual is, or the season of training in which the individual is undergoing. So these two again determine the strength training that you design. So for athletes, sport specific needs is important. Competition schedule again that gives you different types of strength training that can be done. We will discuss this in detail in the next lecture. And with respect to sports rehab, when you consider strength training program in a sports rehabilitation scenario, the strength training principle have to be aligned with the phase of the rehabilitation. Which phase? Because that is again important to pay attention to, because as we had earlier seen in the previous week lectures, the phase of rehab is an important aspect if you want to introduce various rehabilitation techniques and the strength training during the process of recovery. It should be further fine tuned in terms of gradual progression depending on the tissue that is being repaired and then being remodeled. And also the progression has to be starting from an isometric to an isotonic concentric to isotonic eccentric, then thereafter in the last final phase or phase 3 in terms of eccentric or plyometric exercises. So to summarize, athlete's profile and sports demand help in designing the strength training program as per the individual need. The goal is important first step in determining what kind of design your strength training program is going to be, and the principles have to be aligned with the goals. That's very important. Manipulating the training variables helps in kind of tailor make the desired outcome, and monitoring is also key, because without monitoring it is difficult to kind of have an objective or a structured training program that can kind of peak at the right time, also avoid overtraining and injuries during the process of strength training. And finally, it is important that you pay attention to each and every factor, so accordingly that has to be kind of manipulated to have a desired outcome in terms of the strength gain. So, for those of you who are interested in further in-depth learning, these are the references that I have provided here. And thank you so much for being with me. Jai Hind.